Hola, ¿cómo están? Gracias por acompañarnos. Hoy es el consejo de Kiyosaki y va a hablar acerca del Bitcoin. Ya sabes, si te gusta este video, dale click a la campanita, suscríbete, prende las notificaciones y déjanos estas preguntas. Formar parte del equipo de Robert, de Kim y de Blair Singer es una de las cosas que más me ha ayudado y servido en la vida en los últimos 15 años. Y bueno, estas entrevistas que salen de Rich Dad Radio son fantásticas. El día de hoy va a entrevistar a una persona, Saifedean Ammous, que es una persona que conoce bien acerca de bitcoins, y es una entrevista muy entretenida porque también creo que Robert es muy claro al no hablar de absolutos, no siempre, lo único, solo yo, solo esto, y al hablar de estos bitcoins, de este nuevo dinero que fue creado, una de las monedas más estables que hay ahorita en el mundo, hace que nosotros podamos tener diferentes puntos de vista. Así es que si quieres saber algo más, pues bueno, hay que verlo. Recuerda que tenemos los fines para que tengas educación, para que aprendas. No es ni bueno ni malo, simplemente si no te gusta, pues no te gusta, y hay muchas otras cosas en las que puedes invertir o estudiar o ver. Gracias a eso el mundo tiene diversidad y la diversidad nos hace libres. Así es que no te pierdas esta entrevista. ¡Vámonos!
The good news and bad news about money. Here's Robert Kiyosaki.
What caused you to write the Bitcoin standard and the decentralized alternative to centralized communism? I mean, centralized banking.
Yeah, I think that's a very astute observation. If you think economically, what really was the beating heart of the communist, well, I should say the dead heart of the dead communist economy corpse, was the Gosbank, the communist bank, which essentially was one bank in the Soviet Union, and everybody had an account at Gosbank. And it seems that the US and other countries seem to be headed in that direction. And it's not, I don't think the Biden victory is necessarily what's taking us there. It may be accelerating the process, but I think, the process of heading in that direction of everybody getting their bank in their central bank, getting their account at the central bank is increasingly likely. And, it seems not even the banking system is able to stop this. But I think the one alternative that is going to be offered, the one alternative that is available is Bitcoin. And that is the subtitle of my book, The Bitcoin Standards, the Decentralized Alternative to Central Banking. And I think whether you like Bitcoin or not, you have to admit that it is the only working alternative that exists today for central banking, essentially, because central banking has a monopoly on providing the currency, and it has a monopoly on international correspondence banking, transferring money from one country to the other. Both of those two things have to be done through central banks until Bitcoin came along and offered us one alternative. So really, it's the only decentralized and only alternative to that process. And that's the one very important aspect of Bitcoin.
Wait. Hang on 1 second. You use a very powerful word in there. It's called only. Yeah. So you would dump all gold and silver and real estate and all that.
Gold and silver are, they're substitutes for the monetary function, in that they have a money supply that is not determined by a central bank, but they're unfortunately no substitute for international payments. That's the sad reality. There's no gold banking. You can't use your gold to pay internationally. You can't ship gold, and there's no gold settlement and clearance system.
Wait, stop. I can. So please be careful, because I've been doing that when I was a kid.
Yeah, well,
this is what you and I were getting into. Is why do you Bitcoin guys have to dump on gold and silver, and why do gold and silver guys have to dump on Bitcoin? I don't understand. You think gold and silver is the enemy when really it's communism.
No, I wasn't dumping on them. I was saying
don't use the word only, because there's other ways, my friend. I'm a lot older than you, and there are ways.
Yes, there are ways, but there's no way to make payments. No matter what you do, in terms of there's no gold bank. You can't make a payment, buy something online with physical gold that gets shipped from the country to where you're buying it. You can use it yourself. You can store it. You can buy it and sell it. You can gift it.
Okay, be careful. You're using the word only. You might not be the smartest guy in the world, because there's guys who are smarter than you. And
Yes.
we've lived longer, we've done things differently. So just be careful. I just don't know why you guys get into this pissing match.
I'm really not. Like, if you look at my book, the first 7 chapters are essentially all about gold, mostly about gold. It's all about gold. And I am a gold bug. I'm still, at heart, I still love gold. And I don't get into those pissing matches with the gold bugs. In fact, I'm usually one of the people that's trying to mend the bridges between the two.
I'm gonna put you and Peter Schiff on the same show, and then we'll see who's really the most neutral.
I've had a debate with Peter Schiff. You can Google it. It's on YouTube. There's me and Peter Schiff. We've had a debate once. You can see the perspectives. I'm not anti-gold. I think gold is good. It's just the problem with gold is that you can't make an international banking payment system work around gold since 1914 because the Bank of England and the Central Bank of the United States have essentially monopolized that trade. And Bitcoin gets around it. Bitcoin fixes this.
With your words only, and you can't. Those are called absolutes.
It's been a century of people trying to build a payment system around gold and failing, and it gets captured by government. And that's because that's really the crux of the point of my book is that Bitcoin improves on gold's monetary policy, but more importantly, Bitcoin improves on gold in the fact that it's much harder for governments to capture it and co-opt it.
Well, we'll see.
We'll see.
Why are you so? What are the advantages of Bitcoin for somebody like Rodney who has none? You can get into a pissing match with Peter Schiff and Rogers, but it doesn't do any good unless you really. Man, it's entertaining to me. But I want to know why you think Bitcoin is going to go to the moon. You don't have to make gold and silver wrong. That's what I'm trying to say.
No, it's I'm not trying to I'm not trying to be very absolutist about it. I'm just trying to distinguish the value proposition, which is that in the case of Bitcoin, the clearance of Bitcoin is performed using software and hardware that's relatively very cheap. So you need a few $100s to have equipment that can run the Bitcoin network. And actually, probably you could do it for less than $100 as well.
But why? Why would I bother?
Well, why? Well, you said it. There's communism coming. You don't want to explore all the other options that are out there.
Let me ask you
give it a chance.
Okay, for full disclosure, I own Bitcoin. Okay.
Yeah.
I also own more gold and silver.
That problem takes care of itself usually because your Bitcoin eventually appreciates more than your silver. It happens to most people who try both.
You sit there with that arrogant young man's cocky attitude, and you're going to get your ass stomped on because I've had my ass stomped on because I had the same stupid attitude. I'm just trying to say this, okay? I'm going to ask this question, which nobody's ever answered me. Nobody has. The reason I like gold and silver, I've started gold mines and silver mines. So there's Bitcoin mines. Okay. Now, that takes a lot of work. That's probably a 20-year process to start a gold mine. And the gold mine I started out of Toronto, Canada, TSC, the Toronto Stock Exchange, the Chinese government took from me. So you may understand now why I don't like doing business with the Chinese. But my silver mine out of Argentina is smoking along. I was producing silver at $1 an ounce. And today it's about $22 an ounce and all that. So I'm doing okay. Plus I made money selling the shares of the stock and all this stuff. So I'm doing okay. The question you guys have never answered for me is, why can't somebody else just produce their own Bitcoin? If the equipment is so cheap, why don't I just make my own?
Yeah, thousands of people have produced thousands of other Bitcoins, but none of them can work on the Bitcoin network. That's the key thing.
I don't see you guys get into those absolutes. Look, if it's all it is.
No, this is an absolute because it's cryptography. Like if
I understand that, but
somebody with Bitcoin,
why can't I just? It's not like a gold mine. It's not a physical gold thing. It's just it's basically code. So why can't?
Yeah, well. And the gold is basically atoms in a sense, but we give it value. If you think about economics is in the minds of people. If you study the Austrian school, value is subjective. We give things value. So we decide that this yellow shiny metal is very valuable. We decide that the silver shiny metal is a little less valuable, but also quite valuable. And we also can decide that digital tokens that can clear payments and clear messages with payments on a network that has wide acceptability around the world, that has high level of reliability in the fidelity of its transactions, we can also decide to give that value. There's no difference. It doesn't have to be material. You know, there are a lot of things that are immaterial that have value.
So you're saying it's the acceptance and the network of Bitcoin that gives it its value.
And specifically, there are reasons why it is the network of Bitcoin. And it's not just because it's a first mover advantage or it's because it's the biggest network. It's specifically because the Bitcoin network is the only network that has grown from day one, almost independently, not controlled by anybody, and grown according to the rules of the protocol, not according to somebody running the protocol. The guy who made it disappeared.
I understand that, but why couldn't I start my own with my little Apple Mac computer?
How can you start your own and
Why
not be
couldn't
able
I,
to
if it's just code?
You can start it, but you can't start it and not be in charge of it. That's the problem. How do you start one that you don't control? That's the tricky part. So Bitcoin had a lucky set of circumstances where the guy who made it disappeared for whatever reason, and then it continued to operate without anybody in charge. And the protocol continued to grow, and all the people who tried to take control of it have failed repeatedly, which suggests that there's a lot of inertia and a lot of sclerosis in the network, which means that the main consensus parameters of the network should be around for a while.
So I just heard there's a guy in Tahiti who has a better Bitcoin.
Yeah, good for him. You know, there are people who in the 90s claimed to have a better internet, and
They don't have gold in Tahiti, but they have Apple computers. Hey, Saif, I really am asking my questions to you because they look, I have traveled the world looking for gold and silver. You know, I was in Peru and I was standing at 14,000 feet. The mine was up at 17,000 feet. And I'm standing there and there's little holes in the ground going up the mountain. And I'm standing there talking to the mining engineer, you know, he's a Canadian mining engineer. I said, what are those little holes? He says, there are little mines. I said, when? He says, probably 500 years ago. And I said, so you mean the Inca or the Peruvians or the Indians were looking for gold way back then? There were miners back then, before there was internet, before there was television, before there was airline travel, before there were ships, before the Spaniards came. But they intuitively knew about gold. And that's so, every time I talk to you guys, I said, well, you cannot break Bitcoin. I go, well, you know, I don't know about that. So that's why I'm sincerely asking you the question, why couldn't I sit here with my little $1,000 MacBook and start my own little mine and produce my own little coins?
You can try and mine on the Bitcoin network. Just you can go and try and mine gold with your own hands. But, you know, there are better ways for you to make gold, which is, you know, write books and make your beautiful and great shows. And then you're able to make money from that, and then you can buy your gold. It's just a more efficient way of doing it. It's the same thing with Bitcoin. You can mine your own Bitcoin. You can do it with your laptop, but you're just going to waste electricity and make very, 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 very few coins. Basically, the term shitcoin has been mentioned in Congress now. It's in the congressional record after Representative Warren Davidson mentioned it last year. And it's the definition I would venture for it, and I think a lot of people will agree with this. A shitcoin is a form of money that has somebody at the top of it who can just make more of it at their will. And so anything that has somebody in charge who can make more of it is a shitcoin. And so that there are, I think, 5,000 or 6,000 shitcoins that are digital, that copy Bitcoin's code in certain ways and do the same thing that Bitcoin does. But they have a guy in charge, or a group of people in charge, all of them. And essentially, those people can change the supply at any point in time.
Okay,
it's very easy for them.
So I'm asked this question. So it was in the code. I'm not saying the Bitcoin was, I think I love about Bitcoin was this: as its price went up, or its value went up, its volume went down. Whereas the U.S. dollar, by your definition, is shitcoin, because as the value of the dollar comes down, its volume goes up. They print more of it.
Yep, exactly.
But you understand, that's why I like gold and silver also, is because I don't trust a shitcoin called the U.S. dollar.
Absolutely. That's exactly the point that I make in my book. The first 7 chapters of my book are to make this point, that the most important thing in money is the stock to flow ratio. It's the ratio of the existing stockpile, of the existing supply, to the flow, to the new production. And things that have a high stock to flow have always historically been money. And historically, the thing that has had the highest stock to flow is gold. And second place is silver. Bitcoin is different because its stock to flow now is going to overtake gold's stock to flow. It's going to become higher than gold over the next few years.
And that's why I own it. But let me ask this question. Okay, so that's the. So why can't, the question was, we had these things called ICOs, initial coin offerings and all that. Are those shit coins?
These are shit coins. Yes, absolutely. They're definitely shit coins. All the ICOs, all the other coins other than Bitcoin, they are shit coins because all of them, whatever you think about the technology and the things that they're doing, there's a group of people behind them who could get together and change the supply quite easily. With Bitcoin, we know for a fact that this is very, very, very difficult to happen. And I would like to tell anybody who thinks that it can happen, to go ahead and try and do it, because we've had a concentrated cartel, essentially, of the most significant businesses in Bitcoin, along with some of the most important developers in Bitcoin, and a lot of people with a lot of Bitcoin get together a couple of years ago and try and change the code behind Bitcoin to change one small parameter in the code of Bitcoin, not even change the supply. And they couldn't do it. None of the other coins have that. The US dollar doesn't have that. There's people in charge of the US dollar who can make an endless amount of it. And that's why it too, and all national currencies, in my opinion, are shit coins.
So, yeah, I understand that. So are you saying it's almost impossible for somebody to write a code alongside Bitcoin's code or duplicate the code, but call it Joe's coin?
It is possible. You can do it, but good luck with doing it and getting the market to value that as if it is Bitcoin. So it's as if, if the Zimbabwean central bank prints more dollars, that's not going to devalue the US dollars. People can tell the difference. Just because they're both called dollars, that's different. And so all these other coins, if you look at their charts, over 5 years, all of them end up basically flatlining against Bitcoin. They tend towards zero and continue to collect more zeros next to the decimal point as they tend toward absolute zero and zero liquidity.
I understand that, because when I was starting off in gold, they said, what's the definition of a gold miner? The definition of a gold miner is a liar standing next to a hole in the ground. So I understand, there was a lot of fakes out there. And the reason I love Bitcoin and all this is because I think the dollar is criminal, what they're doing. The centralized bank, the Fed and the Treasury, they just keep printing more of it to solve our problems. So this is and that's the reason I have gold, silver, and Bitcoin, is because the Fed and the US dollar, and in my opinion, all fiat currencies, with the euro, the yen, and the peso, they're shit currencies. I mean, would you agree?
You're not going to get any argument from me about that.
Yeah, I know that. My question is then, if the Fed and centralized banks come up with centralized coins, what's your opinion on that? Because that's why I'm asking. That's why I talk to guys like you. What do you think is going to happen?
I think people think that this is competition for Bitcoin, but in my mind, it's advertisement for Bitcoin. This is just them telling you what is really valuable about Bitcoin. That, hey, sign up, take our currency where the supply is up to us. We determine it at any point in time, and we can always give anybody as many as we want. And you get no say in the supply, and you can't even know how many there are. And also, we get to figure out all the transactions done by you, and we can, if we don't like your Facebook posts, you don't get to eat for a month.
I like your attitude.